my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and here is your detailed forecast update for November 7th, 2024. We've got a severe thunderstorm outbreak expected to unfold across the southeast of Queensland, extending into the Brisbane area and the Sunshine Coast from tomorrow afternoon. We've also got a week-long storm outbreak expected for the southeast and the south-central parts of Queensland, and storms expected to extend into New South Wales as well. We'll take a look at the heatwave that is unfolding across Queensland and into New South Wales before heading over north, and we'll talk about the tropical weather scene up there. We do have rumbles of activity for a tropical cyclone. We'll also talk about a thunderstorm outbreak expected to materialise tomorrow night across parts of Western Australia. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing. The support lately has been much appreciated. But let's get stuck straight into things with that thunderstorm outbreak that we're talking about tomorrow afternoon and evening across the southeast of Queensland. Now you can already see just by these temperature observations where currently temperatures at about 10 o'clock in the morning are already approaching 37 or 38 degrees in some of these locations, and then up towards 35 or 36 in New South Wales. The fuel is building for this severe thunderstorm outbreak 24 hours in advance, and that's going to be evident tonight. We're going to see a bunch of convective stuff blow up across the northeast of New South Wales, pretty much north of the Barrington Tops and Newcastle, up towards Tamworth, Armidale, and then further north towards Coffs Harbour, Grafton and Lismore. We'll see a few pulse thunderstorms blow up there. Nothing severe, nothing crazy is expected, but we could still see some isolated pockets of heavy rainfall, damaging winds, and some pretty wild temperature drops as well. And this will also extend further into southeastern Queensland, outside of the scenic rim, and then further north towards Toowoomba. Again, nothing crazy expected into the southeast of Queensland tonight. We'll see some stronger thunderstorms far up towards south central and southwestern Queensland, out towards Mumba in South Australia, and then further north out towards Birdsville and Mount Isa into the western part of the state, which will join up to a line of thunderstorms, pulse thunderstorms, over the areas in the central northern territory. Again, nothing crazy and nothing really worth talking about with these thunderstorms here. Now, as this low pressure area gets dragged across the New South Wales and Victoria state, that's a cool change, mind you, that we're going to be seeing bring a bit of reprieve to those temperatures tonight. It's not quite going to make it up into the southeast of Queensland, and as such, temperatures will still remain high there for tomorrow, and that will give way for some thunderstorms in the afternoon and evening to fire up. And you can see that they do fire up in quite dramatic fashion, in all fairness, at around 2 or 3 p.m. local time. Now, we're expecting two areas of thunderstorms to blow up tomorrow afternoon. We're going to start off talking about the one that's expected along the Queensland and New South Wales border outside of Warwick and Toowoomba. This one will then go on into the Brisbane metro area, bringing severe thunderstorms, housing damaging winds, heavy rainfall and large hailstones by around 5 p.m. local time. Now, these severe thunderstorms here will pack a punch, and they'll have some pretty big impacts in store for parts of the northern suburbs of Brisbane up to the Cape Morton, the Moreton Bay area rather, and the Redcliffe area. We'll see some pretty nasty severe thunderstorms out there, like I said, for that heavy rainfall, large hailstones and damaging winds. Now, these thunderstorms will upscale as well pretty quickly. They'll likely join up into a bit of a squall line by around 6 or 7 p.m. Basically, the further north that they get, the more likely it's going to be into a big rain-making squall event up towards Maroochydore and Coolum. These thunderstorms here will also weaken off by around sort of 7 or 8 p.m. as they get further up the Sunshine Coast, but still, especially around the Brisbane area and into the southern suburbs and the western suburbs of Brisbane, will likely have some pretty significant thunderstorms earlier on in the afternoon and evening before they upscale into that squall event that we have been talking about. And there's a lot of fuel for these severe thunderstorms here as well. I mean, we've been talking about temperatures being sky high. Convective available potential energy is right there for these thunderstorms as well. So, like I said, they will have a field day with the available conditions that they're going to have. However, interestingly, both the Axis G3 and the GFS are saying nothing in terms of a thunderstorm outbreak tomorrow. The GFS does keep Brisbane scorching hot. They're giving it a maximum of 37 degrees tomorrow, which is absolutely brutal, and that's at 10 o'clock in the morning. So I reckon the GFS and the Access G3 forecast models might be throwing up a few boogies on the forecast. It's still going to be really hot in Brisbane, but I reckon getting up towards 37 or 38 earlier on in the morning, I don't think that's going to happen. They're more likely to head for a top of around 35 or 36, and I mean, name a day in the past 10 years where Brisbane hasn't had a thunderstorm outbreak or where temperatures have exceeded 35 degrees. It's just how things roll in the southeast of Queensland, and you can see here on the convective available potential energy values here, even though conditions aren't going to be perfect thermodynamically for these thunderstorms, there is so much energy in the atmosphere for them to make the most of, so it's unlikely that they don't fire up and become problematic in the afternoon and evening. Like I said, damaging winds, heavy rainfall and large hailstones, at least initially for that large hailstone, hailstones when they fire up into the western suburbs of Brisbane, but by the time the storms get themselves over Brisbane and then into the northern suburbs and up to the Sunshine Coast, I don't reckon there will be a large hailstone threat. I just reckon these storms will be severe warned for damaging winds, if they are severe warned at all. It's not going to be an Armageddon severe thunderstorm outbreak, and these thunderstorms aren't going to be as strong as those single cellular storms that have been making a habit of firing up in the southern suburbs and then blasting across the Brisbane River and bringing just mayhem to some of the southern suburbs of Brisbane. You know, the ones I'm talking about from a couple of days ago. They won't be like that at all. They will be substantially weaker, but still certainly worth talking about over into the southeast of Queensland. Some pretty nasty thunderstorms do look possible tomorrow afternoon. And then that second area of thunderstorms outside of Tambo and Rolleston, they will most likely just be pulse thunderstorms and scattered pulse thunderstorms at that. Slow moving, not doing anything, nothing really interesting or worth talking about, but out towards the Rolleston, Tambo, Jericho, and then even extending out towards Muttaburra and Longreach, we will see some thunderstorms out there. It's going to be a hot one out there as well tomorrow, 41 or 42 degrees at the tops for those locations. So an absolute scorcher in those pulse thunderstorms. Once again, we'll have a lot of fuel to rapidly develop in the afternoon and evening hours. Now, thankfully, in terms of thunderstorms, there is going to be a little bit of reprieve from those severe ones. Still, though, pulse thunderstorms expected on both Saturday and Sunday. They will fire up again on pretty dramatic fashion on Sunday afternoon as well, especially deeper out past the scenic rim outside of Toowoomba and then inland up towards Taroom and Rolleston. We'll see some pretty interesting pulse thunderstorms fire up out there and potentially severe thunderstorms into the northeast of New South Wales before we see a big thunderstorm outbreak expected to start on Monday, and we'll see that continue through the early parts of next week in the southeast of Queensland, bring some very heavy rainfall to some of these locations. Now, we're going to have a lot of instability in the air on Monday and also a lot of available potential energy for these thunderstorms to make themselves at home across the southeast of Queensland, and as such, we're expecting a widespread severe thunderstorm outbreak across south central parts of Queensland, inland around Charleville and Roma, and then another widespread severe thunderstorm outbreak possible into the southeastern corner of Queensland, south of Toowoomba, Stanthorpe and Warwick, and into the northeast of New South Wales around Moree, extending south towards Armidale and Tamworth, and there will be a lot of thunderstorms on Monday night as well. Now, these thunderstorms could get quite strong and quite gnarly as well into the northeast of New South Wales, with potentially severe thunderstorms with damaging winds, large hailstones and heavy rainfall heading into the Lismore and Grafton area by nightfall, and those thunderstorms there could pack a punch in terms of impacts. Then Tuesday afternoon it happens all again, some thunderstorms expected to outbreak across parts of the northeast of New South Wales and into the southeast of Queensland. Areas that are most likely to be impacted include the scenic rim and out towards the Tamborine area. The Gold Coast could also get some pretty significant impacts as well Tuesday afternoon and evening, and thunderstorms also expected to kind of dot the line along the Queensland-New South Wales border as far inland as Tibooburra, inland into New South Wales, basically getting themselves out towards South Australia at that point. So it is going to be quite a stormy one indeed. These thunderstorms will likely upscale later on Tuesday night, become a big squall line. You can see it here on this forecast extending between Warwick out towards Toowoomba, Chinchilla, Taroom and Injune, and it looks like this thunderstorm line here could pack a punch. Something that I want to take a look at more so on the day of the weather event. I mean, it is still a long way out in the future, but the forecast model's been calling for exactly this over the last couple of days, and between the Axis G3 and the Eastern BEF, yes, there are pretty major discrepancies, but they're calling for similar intensity thunderstorms. Some pretty intense, severe ones rather, do look to be on the forecast at this time. Those thunderstorms expected to pipe down for a couple of days on Wednesday and Thursday, but we did see yesterday on the forecast that an outbreak of thunderstorms right up the central Queensland coastline as far north as about Townsville and Forsyth is expected on Friday the 15th of November. Again, this is something I'm going to want to take a look at much closer to the date, because thunderstorms very rarely are predictable about 10 days out into the future, but again, we will take a look at this at a closer date. It looks like Queensland next week is going to be really stormy on pretty much every single day, so we will certainly need to keep a close eye and keep on top of the forecast for Queensland, and there's no better way to do that than by subscribing to the channel. I'll be having still releasing daily forecast updates on these Queensland thunderstorms as they materialise over the central and the southeastern Queensland coastlines. And that basically does it for thunderstorms. It's been a bit of a shorter update on those thunderstorms today. If you have any questions or comments about them, then please do leave them in the comment section down below. I'll get through as many of them as I can throughout the course of today. Now, we will just stay over east and talk about the heat that is currently extending across New South Wales and Queensland. Victoria had it yesterday. Melbourne got to a beautiful top of 33, but that's really warm for this time of the year for them before that cool change came through and saved them, I imagine. Temperatures expected to go into the high 30s and early 40s 40s for much of the northeast of New South Wales. Tamworth expecting a very warm top of 35. Moree expecting a top of 40, and a bunch of other locations as well expected to go into the low 40s. And then into the low to mid 40s for parts of Queensland. You can see outside of Longreach now towards Winton, temperatures expected to rise up to 43 or 44 degrees today. Emerald expecting a top of 40, and like we talked about, Brisbane also expecting a top deep into the 30s, up in towards 33, 34, maybe even 35 or 36. And it's going to be even warmer tomorrow for Brisbane, and then tops up into about the 35, 36 sort of temperature bracket along the Sunshine Coast up towards Maroochydore and Maryborough and Hervey Bay as well. So very warm indeed across parts of Queensland and very warm into the central parts of the state as well. Typical for this time of the year, we're definitely starting to get some of that heat build up, but it is going to be uncomfortably warm with that humidity and those thunderstorms expected to fire up both tonight and tomorrow night. And while we're talking about stuff that's hot, well, we've got to talk about the tropics. You can see on the tropical rainfall radar, at least over the next 10 days, still nothing. I mean, it is the first month of the wet season, but still these tropics remaining very dry, especially for this time of the year as well. I mean, I would expect some rainfall to begin to pipe up, especially into the far north of Queensland, but we just don't have anything on the radar yet, which isn't totally unusual. I mean, November can wind up being one of the driest months of the year for far north Queensland, and mark my words, it's certainly happening this year. But again, we would certainly start to expect to see some rainfall towards the end of the month up there, with some falls starting to pipe up. A lot of comments do say that they don't expect any substantial rainfall until about Christmas time, and then after that it's just Armageddon in terms of trying to find a day that isn't going to pour down with rain across far north Queensland. But still, we would expect to see, and would love to see as well, considering the drought conditions extending across up there, some rainfall up there. Certainly no lack of rainfall though over the Kimberley region of WA. Falls up to 100 millimetres expected over the next 10 days, and that's just from thunderstorms. And these thunderstorms penetrating inland as well, down to the Northern Territory into South Australia, Minturpie, Coober Pedy, Yallara, all those locations in rural Australia, expecting some pretty substantial rainfall accumulations over the coming couple of days. The majority of that will actually fall over the next 5 days, with a bit of a rainfall event expected to unfold there from Friday afternoon just from thunderstorms, and then Saturday afternoon and Sunday morning especially, with severe thunderstorms expected across parts of South Australia. Sunday afternoon could get quite hairy for some of these locations in terms of a severe thunderstorm outbreak. Certainly something that I want to keep talking about in a later forecast update. And then the GFS is something that I also want to take a look at as well in terms of the cyclone update. Now, we did have rumbles of activity on the Solomon Islands, but that has since been killed off on the forecast, and it never made it over to the windy forecast either. We're talking about this closer towards November 20th, but this is still definitely an area that I would like to be watching over the next 10 days. It can spin up tropical cyclones, very weak tropical cyclones at this time of the year, so certainly something that I will keep a close eye on. But I'm not expecting anything to happen until at least December. What has really caught my eye is just the tropical disturbances that keep spinning up across parts of the Indian Ocean, outside of the Cocos Keeling Islands and outside of Christmas Island as well. We do have some spin-ups there, with a tropical cyclone expected to develop south of the Maldives by next Saturday the 16th of November. Again, that is well out of the Australian area of responsibility, but it does go to show that tropical cyclones are now starting to spin up in this area, and this is certainly an area that I will keep a very close eye on. In terms of tropical cyclones, I don't think it's going to happen, not in the next kind of 15 days or so. We're not going to see tropical cyclones spin up in this area that end up being in the Australian area of responsibility, but again, we will just wait and see. Apart from that, nothing really happening around the tropical scene. Like I said, it is as dead as a doorknob. We do have a couple of thunderstorms expected to materialise tomorrow afternoon across the southwest of Western Australia, which will get a few people excited nonetheless. However, unfortunately for Perth, we're not expecting any thunderstorms to kind of materialise in the Perth metro area. They will be over the hills and further inland into the wheat belt. Now, just taking a look at this forecast here, it does also depend on where this low pressure trough gets itself. If it situates itself closer to the Perth area as opposed to well outside of the wheat belt and deeper into sort of the Gascoyne and the goldfields, then we will see a couple of thunderstorms fire up over the Perth metro area, but at this time I just don't see it happening. I think it's just too early on in the year to see a couple of thunderstorms fire up there. So for Perth viewers, I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow night. Definitely not going to be a thunderstorm night. But for those of you out in the wheat belt, further out towards Merredin and Southern Cross, it looks like a couple of good thunderstorms are possible out there into the afternoon and evening hours. Certainly something to get excited for at this time. But in terms of rainfall, unfortunately, it's nothing going. There's really nothing expected. A couple of drops of rainfall possible, and under the right thunderstorm thunderstorm. 15 to 20 millimeters also looks possible, but for the most part, a lot of locations are going to be left high and dry from these thunderstorms. And yeah, that basically does it for a pretty comprehensive Australian weather outlook as well. If you have any questions or comments, especially into the southeast of Queensland, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll get back to as many people as I can throughout the course of today. It definitely is moving into a busy phase for southeastern Queensland as well, so don't panic with these thunderstorms, but certainly keep on top of the forecast and the radar as well. But that is all from me today. A special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now, and I could not run this show without them, but that is all from me, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.